You coming closer?
No fun.
Boom! You are live on the TruMon Show with Arthur and Fiona and me, the original TruMon, Yannick, aka Yannick, aka TruMon.
Hi,
I go
John.
under many pseudonym or names, but anyway, it's all the same. It's all the same one. Today we're together to talk about that super intelligence, and I was just rehearsing with Fiona before you join us, Arthur, because you were gone to do something, get a drink, and you came back. And like I was telling, now I'm gonna dive deep right in there. We don't need presentation and stuff. We've been together for a while, for a few times. So, and you seem to be doing just fine. So I'm not gonna ask you. Hey guys, how are you doing? I was with you just 5 minutes ago. But anyway, we're gonna dive right in it. And the topic I want to start with, it's certainly the super intelligence, but I'm gonna articulate my thought the most precise that I can, and not too long, not try to spread too long. But we're all looking for God, okay? We're all seeking God. We're all wondering where is God and all that stuff. And in the English language, it's easy to get detached from that super soul, super intelligence, because the eye in the sky, the sun, we call it the sun in English, where in French it's called soleil, soul. There's the word soul in it. So what if all that time, hypothetically, I'm saying, I don't have all the answers here. It's my opinion. What if that eye in the sky was that super soul, that super intelligence, and it sees everything and it supersedes everything and it gives life to everything? You know, what if that sun we have in the sky is really the eye of God, or God itself, or the force itself, because it has some kind of force. I think it's solar energy, it's called. So it's very powerful, the sun. So when it has everything, without the sun here, there's no life. And so he's the giver of life. He's your savior because he's giving you life. But what if that old time we're all missing the whole thing, because it's right there in front of us, just like anything, all the conspiracies and all the lies and deception, it's right in front of us. We're just not seeing it. And the fact also that I think we're programmed not to see it with the sunglasses and all that stuff. You know, they tell us that the sun is dangerous for us. We have to wear sunglasses, sunscreen, the whole kit about the protection from being in sync or on the same frequency as the sun. You know, when you shine your interior, when you shine your being, you can shine like the sun. You can reach that state, not physically, but spiritually, if you want to call it, internally. So what if during all, because I've never heard anyone talking about that kind of stuff on the internet. That's what I was telling Kim today. I'm like, I've watched podcasts and all that stuff, but nobody really talk about where is God, like what is it, where it is, because for sure it has some kind of presence here. Yes, we all say it's everywhere around us. It's omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, but that's what the sun is too. It's not just nature. If we talk about really, really God, or the force itself, what gives life, what made you and me and everything that's around us, has to be within the power of the sun or something. I don't know. I'm going far. I'm going deep with this, but I would like to hear you guys on this. Maybe I don't think it has to do with self-obsession this time, but Shadow's laughing. But no. But I know what you meant the last time. Yeah, but I'm saying it could be right here, right now, right in front of us.
What I'd say, Janik, is that the time we spend searching for God, looking for God, is the time we've forgotten who we are. We're lost. The time we spend on fiction, because anything defined to us is fiction. Anything explained to us about anything is fiction. We are the only ones here. If we don't exist, there is no sun to experience. We're the ones who think and feel. We are the first party to all life experience. Everything's man-made. Everything is man-made. Slow it all down and have a real good think about everything, and you'll come to see that we're the ones who are thinking, feeling, and talking about life. No matter what it is, no matter what to say, it's always a man who talks about it, thinks about it, expresses the experiences, etc. Without us, there is no sun. We are the sun. And the more that we remember who we really are, we're in the senses. We talked about all this about senses, being in the senses of life, not the alphabet chit-chats in our head, none of that stuff. It's the more we are connecting in the experience of life itself that we are, because we are life. That's what God is. God is life. When we talk about consciousness, we're talking about life. When we talk about the sun, we're talking about life. When we're talking about anything to do with freedom, joy, whatever, we're talking about life. We are life. We are the ones as life, living life, experiencing life. Anything explained to, as I've mentioned in other videos going back years now, anyone talks about UFOs or military bases on Mars or some quantum physics somewhere or some archetypal being in some other hierarchy of dimensions. It's only a man who came up with it and explained it and talked about it. It's only a man who's relaying and reacting and talking about it. It's always a man to the experience, no matter what it is. Everything is man-made. The only area that I think has confused everyone, including us, was the power of our breath. When we breathe out, our thoughts, our intentions, our dreams are embodied in the breath out. So those images, those feelings that we put out into life, because we give it life, we are under the effect. So we cannot, not only do we affect other people who breathe in these images, these scripts, these stories, these feelings, but we also are at the effect of others who are also breathing out, and we breathe it in because we're all connected to the air. We're all part of that co-creation. We're all part of this. It's like what we talked about. You harm the water, you harm everyone that drinks that water. You harm the air, you affect everyone who breathes the air. You affect the soil, you affect everyone who's the soil. So in the illusion of saying, oh, there's a God and there's this and that also is harming others because they're starting to forget who they are. Because when we talk about God, like we mentioned last week, we're talking about full responsibility for life. When we talk about love, it's full responsibility for what we say we love. So the sun, when we look at it, is the glory of life that we give light to. We're the ones who put the light out there, and it's reflecting back as a co-creation of all of us together. It's a big journey of undoing everything that was explained to us, and the depth of system science for education and all the inculcation has been done to all our families and everyone, all the peers and everyone in the communities that we're brought up in the city. They're all affected by this. They're all looking through time and space constructs and science-based thinking, and from that, archaeological and spiritual kind of concepts and constructs. But it's only in the present sense, which is eternal. It's in the here and now that we sense everything. When we start to sense everything again, who we really are, we will know that we've already met God. You see, if you look at it from the Christian analogy, the way that creationism is described in the Bible, as they talk about how God created everything, this God. And then he created nature, and then God came as man to be amongst the paradise of God's creation. So God came as man, as part of nature, earth. So we are still that now, if you are looking from that kind of creation thinking. And man created, so God created, and the sharing of the co-creation of that responsibility for the dream of life is us. There is nothing outside of this. The generations of apparitions that we have manifested, because in the breath, it's like the libraries of Hollywood or the libraries of all the TV stations that have all the shows and advertising, everything they've got in their videotapes or now digital, and then they want to bring it on air so people can watch it live, right? All that as an analogy is the effect of the apparitions that we've created in our breath in that library of life that we're all at the effect of. Now, that what I touched on last week about voodoo, if we wanted to, I could concentrate on you and I could put feelings into you with malevolence and try and manipulate you, no matter where you are, because I have the image, I know your sound, I know how you are, and I could begin to work on you. Now, the occultists do that as well to us. It's extenuated by technology, by Hollywood, by social media, because that black magic, all of this is black magic. The influence of playing with telecommunications and movies, shows, is the voodoo between our ears. As long as they can control what's going on between our ears, we can start to shape a world the way they want us to create it, instead of us, each of us, creating it naturally by the senses that we have through nature in the here and now, in the eternal present sense, which is they don't want to start because they can't control you. You follow that because the only reason why you're looking for God, why we're exploring all these things that people tell us, is because we've forgotten who we are. So instead of living and being it and doing it and just creating and expanding what we are, we're now falling away from forgetting all of this into the fictions and starting to explore the entertainment, the fascinations, the seductions, the temptations that the occultic world has provided to keep us busy in the mysteries, through the occults, it's all bullshit. 1,000 million zillion bullshit. Everybody wants to take this man on in a debate on this stuff online. Welcome. Go for it, because we'll show you how it works. If you want to do that.
Also, when they make people pray God and stuff, it's always with words, and you go on your knees and you say some words to God or stuff. I've done it in church during the brainwash, not the programming, more the programming. My point is, God, or the force or the divine, will not come and speak to you with words. So the thing that you say all the time, that ABC 123 is a man-made thing, the language are man-made, because I've heard other people here on this channel telling me that all this was orchestrated by divine, and it's a divine thing, all those languages and stuff. But it makes a lot of sense today if you think that you're gonna have some kind of linking with divine. It's not going to be with words, it's going to be with vibration and frequency and stuff like that you have to tune in. You're not going to talk to God. He doesn't talk with words. So all these words that we have, all those languages, it's again to mess with our eyes. That's all it is, I think.
It's just the divine, we use those words, but it's just man who's turned against man. Just brothers have turned against brothers, sisters have turned against sisters. And, all it is, that's all that's happening here. We're misusing our natural power. We've misused it so much that we have dumbed down, we've shrunken down in size, we've shrunken down life. We have, from who we were, from the evidence, from all the skeletal remains, if you like. Think of how oxygen was so much richer, the pollen was so much intense pre the collapse of the firmament and all what caused the creation of the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, Mediterranean, all these seas and oceans didn't exist once. None of this existed. And underneath are the remains of the first attempt at civilization. They're all buried with roads and towns and cities. It's all dead because we all lived lower down where the oxygen was rich and intense, and because everything was more rich with oxygen and pollen, everything was bigger. And that's why they're finding, so many creatures that are just so much bigger than what we see today. The same kind of creature, be it a cow or a horse, fish, us, everything was so much
Giant
bigger.
trees too, giant trees
Yeah,
and
well,
stuff.
that's where the big
I
question
would
mark
like
is
to
now.
hear
Yeah,
Fiona also on that
yeah, sorry.
topic of the sun and super intelligence and all this thing.
Well,
What's
I don't think really with anything of life that we can pinpoint one thing and say that is it, because like the sun is nothing on its own either. It's like, it's, to me, it's the whole of nature together that is creating life. And that's why we're seeing, as we destroy life and this little creature disappears, that plant disappears, we destroy that forest, we pollute that ocean. That's why gradually life is getting more and more destroyed and desecrated, because every little part of life is vital for the whole of life to continue in its full sort of circle, beauty, whatever of life. So I think we can't just say God is the sun. I think it's in everything, everywhere. Is all, as Arthur was saying, us too. Everything is that God, because we all have that power to create. If we weren't God, why would we have that power to create? Because we have absolute power of creation over our lives. Nobody else does. You know, we create what happens to us, and we're creating what's happening around us as well. And we're even creating what's happening far away from us. I mean, if you think we're using our mobile phones, that's creating certain conditions and lives in China and in the mines, in this, that, and the other. So everything that we need. And I think this is getting more and more, because we're no longer living locally, far from it. Barely anybody lives locally. The more and more we are creating conditions all over the world because of what we're doing in our lives here. So I think everything is as equally as important as everything else in the whole of life. And that's why we have gone in with this mechanistic mind and just think, oh yeah, we can just take down those trees. Oh yeah, we'll just destroy that. Oh, we can, you know, do this, do that, allow deep sea trawling where they drag nets along the bottom of the ocean. And that's fine, you know, because we have lost that connection to how important everything of life is. So that's my take.
you're right, because also it's good to have the sun, but if you want to grow stuff, you're gonna need water too. So
Exactly.
and you're gonna need the ground. So you're not
Mm.
gonna grow stuff just with the sun. So it's good. So I think I was a bit going overboard with putting the whole super soul just on the sun. It's yes within the sun, but it's within the moon. It's within everything. And I like what Arthur was saying, that God or the divine came into man and put man in his dream. Like that makes so much sense, because if not, like I've
Well,
been here for 52 nonsense years in their calendar, and I've never seen God. Like he never came to see me, shake my hand. So I don't know a bit.
Every single piece of fiction, which includes all ancient civilization, everything being uncovered and found, and whatever is being slanted, whatever scripts are slanted to the fictions, they're all man-made prosthetics, man-made apparitions. They really are, because they are just dreams, thoughts that man has created under influence by others who were manipulating fiction. See, we get exposed to fiction, we get absorbed. So what I'm saying is that everything of life has an original purpose. Even though there's an eternal here and now and everything's changing, unique and original, instant by instant, there's an original purpose for every living thing, everything. And in that consciousness, that super intelligence of that information that makes what a rock is and what the rock does and what a bird will do and what a little crawling insect will do, in that super intelligence, how do I describe this? It's the original purpose, and they're feelings. You know, consciousness is a feeling, which is what we sense. because it's in the water of our breath and it lives in the body of the creatures, it lives in us. These feelings, if we have not gone into fantasy and imaginings and made up new feelings and then placed it on a life form and said, this is what the life form is feeling and this is what the life form is about, we start to distort. And this is how the matrix started, because we started to project, we as man, the co-creators, have started to project imagery, undefined imagery that isn't coming from the purpose of the life forms that we would normally sense and attune to that and work with that. We're now under the attack or under the influences of these thought forms, these apparitions, these placebo effects, these Stockholm syndromes, if you want to call them, because we get stuck on the entertainment. Again, this goes back to Adam, Eve, apple, and the snake. You've got the snake around the tree. Okay, in the modern form of this analogy, you've got the snake offering the apple to Eve. Now, Eve is a man. Adam is a man. And the snake is a man. And the apple is the forbidden fruit, or the tree is the forbidden tree. Explanation, instruction, education, suggestion, indoctrination, etc. So what we're saying is that, and exactly Fiona touched on this, that the mobile phone that you play with out there is going to affect others over here. It could even be, in terms of system time, 30 years later, that those effects appear. Now, we may not be able to connect that, but it's happening. We are so intricately connected that way. Even though we're all unique and original, we are all responsible for what we're feeling, because the feelings are the dreams, and the dreams that comes into our collective, what dreamscape, sleep state, whatever you want to call it, are all man-made. Now, there's more to it, because there's also, we have will, and we dream for things, and so things will happen in our dreams and tell us and give us images and stuff. But generally speaking, we are absorbed by fiction, because the fiction is not our dreams. We did not create them. Other men, part of what you call this divine force, this divine, have turned against man, turned against who they are, and turned against other men and women to play out this stuff. Now, what's behind fiction, behind all these things, is power and control. It's just power and control. If we just can return these villages back to local, where children are brought up by nature, they'll form their own godliness amongst it, because they're with man, they're with mum and dad and brothers and sisters and Uncle Jill and Uncle Joe and Auntie Mary, whatever, and the neighbors and all that. Everyone gets to know each other. And if we don't desecrate with fiction, so much of who we are, we will no longer know what doubt was, or distrust, or fear. We would not know complacency or apathy or denial or jealousy. We would not know these fictions. We would, because they're all unnatural. We wouldn't be exposed to it. And we are all we're experiencing here in these end times, these archetypal inventions of the occults,
Okay,
it's because
Arthur,
we are susceptible.
If God came down here as man and we're all representative of divine, that signified that we're all carrying the blueprint, the original blueprint. Now, where is that original blueprint? Is it like what they call DNA in my brain? Is it in nature? And how do we access that blueprint, that original dream, that original intention? And how do we
it pulses that? It pulses as feelings we sense that are natural. It's an eternal pulsation of feelings. No joke, because that's what dreams are. That's what life is. That's what consciousness is all about. So when we can sense the pulsation, the natural pulsation of life, we can be inspired by that, attuned to that, and work with that. If we do that, which is what I've been all about, Fiona, I've been all about creating a local village called a kingdom village is to undo these fictions, these unnatural feelings, these distortions that have confused us, that we've become so dependent upon because they're all prosthetics. The whole of fiction is a prosthetic. And it shows, it mirrors how much we have forgotten who we really are. So we don't know how to use those natural pulsating feelings that come from life forms and nature all around us anymore. But that's how we correct it. It's this is not, you can't put this into a book and play it out step 1 to 10, or whatever, and say this is what you got to do to fix it. We each have to come to it in our unique original way of sensing life, sensing nature, because in that we are being it. We don't have to describe and write about God anymore, because that becomes a fiction to others who get caught up in it.
I like this.
We're being it. So, and when we are like that, we don't have third-party intermeddlers, interceders, interlopers. We don't have representatives. We don't have authorities. We don't have a rule of law anymore. We don't have police, military. The true dream of life, of that real peace and calm, exudes from the pulsation of creativity as we are inspired by life in the here and now, and doing that and being that. And that's where the happiness and the joy comes out of. This is where all the natural things of good art exudes. So how do you can tell the difference? It's very simple. Just look carefully what you're feeling, and is there truly a peace and calm there? Because if you have it, you don't need somebody else to be that. You don't need validation from anybody. You don't need to have anything explained or anything to be talked about you for you to know who you are, so that you exist as the true godliness of life itself. You need nobody. You already are being it, living it, doing it. There's nothing to say anymore. And that's the way out. So each of us got to come to find that. We went through extreme poverty, not to the third world standards, but in terms of living in amongst a world of people with affluence, we became extremely poor. We had affluence, and then we became very poor. And we raised 4 kids. And we persisted. We persisted with this dream to learn how to connect with those feelings that exude from life itself, which means we have to keep undoing our association, our interests with the unnatural feelings, because that is what forms paranoia, psychosis. It forms ridicule, abuse.
Yeah.
All our complaints come out of it, everything, because they're not natural. So when we learn to get back to that here and now, we're in the true poverty of life, but we have everything, because we don't own anything anymore. This is not about an adornment of collections of ideas and images and labeling it and calling ourselves we're goddess or gods and with this and that, and running around, in the ego trips of these things. We've stopped all this. Basically, we've destroyed all the roads that lead to us, because all the roads we traversed on have been destroyed as we went to school, went to university, as we sat down at the breakfast table to listen to mum and dad talking about whatever they're talking about when we were little toddlers. We've destroyed all of it, because what's left is the present sense of life itself that we are, and in that creativity. So we have to, as a village, local village, stop the incursions of strangers coming in and saying, this is not right. You can't do this. This is immoral, or whatever. So we will, by doing this, we will strip right back to nakedness eventually, and be truly that Adam and Eve again, without the pride, without the what's that self-thinking of vanity?
Obsession? Vanity.
Vanity, and we don't think about our nakedness anymore. We don't think about sexual organs. We don't think about sex in that way. We're not controlled by these unnatural feelings anymore. Animals don't do it. We're also the same. We're not meant to be doing this. We've just been so manipulated for so long. There's such a library of these distortions in the breath, in the air, in the atmosphere. And they're also making it worse now with the chemtrails and the HARP and all the other things that they're doing to confuse our ability to create the dreams and bring the dreams into our lives, to cause us to distort our thinking so we get distracted. So we can't concentrate and contemplate on the real beautiful dreams that we're all meant to be creating, which we do as kids brought up in nature. Instead of dreaming fiction, you have a look at all the dreams all of us are brought up in the Matrix, the sirens on the island who've been getting in our heads. We don't have real dreams.
All the bad food out there and the GMO stuff and all, it's all to modify our inside so that I don't know if there's such thing as DNA. I've never seen it on a plate, but let's pretend it exists. And that's what carries our genetic information. Let's just pretend. I think that's what they want to break. Like they want to break us to the point where we become like total amnesic and we never ask questions and never interested in asking questions just because.
It's another world, Johnny. What you're describing is just an alien world that's been man-made. This is no divine intervention. It's just man-made delusion, illusion, fantasies, intentions to control and dominate. So for power and glory, because they believe in the status and all the other things that have evolved as ego trips that everybody's on, that we've all been on. When we end all the books, we're no longer open to books anymore. We have reclaimed who we really are, because these books, these scripts, are filtered through all social media. It's filtered through all television and Hollywood. It's filtered through all engineering and science and technology and the progress of civilization. When we end the books and we put an end to all these unnatural apparitions, these distortions, we start to allow the realness of who we are. The real women become the real mothers, not the ones that are the Semiramis influences under the Diana perceptions, because where women are destroying little boys and girls, they don't even know it. And the men who get brought up by these Semiramis are destroying the children too, because we all get caught up in these bloody lies, because these feelings we're all caught up in are unnatural. They're not the true feelings. They're not the ones we sense that are in the present sense, in the eternal here and now. We have, the Statue of Liberty. You look at that, looking over into New York City. It's a woman holding a lantern and a crown, because it's the greatest weapon the occultists have to continue this chaos, this lost state that we're all in. Because if women can get at us from so young, and we're just immersed in dreams that are not ours, and they're all coming from books, which is not us. We're not a book. Since when have we been born out of a book? Since when can you sit down at the table and eat a book? How can, it isn't us, but we're so damn confused. So women are told they're wearing stilettos and they wear dresses and they have to have that kind of image, and they're told to look like that and look like this, and they pass down all these distorted feelings to the children, because there's these concerns about security, about being right, about getting through school, be seen to be a good, and on all these are lies. Within lies, within lies, within lies. And we are all collectively pushing this. We're immersed in it. So to get back to the sun that shines that you talk about at the beginning of the show, and to experience that, we have to obliterate all fiction. So there is no road leading to or from us that's fiction anymore. No more influences of that. Because while you want one bit of it, we talked about this in other videos, while you want one bit of the system, you bring it all, because it needs all of it to give you that one bit that you love so much and you want. So in our makeup, in our thinking, in our heads, there's so much of this shit going on. And we won't let it go because we're so attached to it, because we're worried about the intimidation and the threats and incarceration and then being seen as someone who's not normal and being subjected to ridicule and abuse and be ostracized. And look, the kind of peer pressure that we do to each other, it's all That's the divine misuse of us obliterating each other. We can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and we can make 1,000 of these videos. We can go to each of us, if we do not let go of the fiction and return to the senses, nothing has changed. But the only thing that's inevitable is the experience of the desecration of life that we have become. And all the time we live out from the scripts of these books, we are destroying each other. We're destroying children. We're seeing children now dying under the age of 6 from fatal diseases now. It's becoming the norms. The scale of this falling state into... look, in the end, after everything else is said and done, we are saying we don't love life. We don't want to be part of life anymore. We love fiction more. We want to be part of fiction. And we will drag fiction with us everywhere we go. Now, this fiction is death to life. It really is. You're looking at distorted life, where once there was living life forms there that had a purpose, an original purpose, doing what it's doing. Now we've turned them into scripts that we follow from books because we've been taught about it from school, and then it's propelled as we add to it, and we add more and more scripts, and all these placebo effects, all the Stockholm syndrome that we're all caught up through belief systems, emotional attachments have become trauma, and out of that, fear and ignorance and arrogance and righteousness, and look, all these things. It's because of these unnatural feelings that we've allowed into us, because our mothers and our fathers made sure it happened to us. They believed they were doing the right thing.
I would like to hear you on something. I was just thinking of something while you were speaking, and maybe Fiona can go ahead and start. They say that often once you start diving into the rabbit hole and all that nonsense, you lift the veil. Lift the veil in front of you. But I think it's much more than a veil. The veil is another freaking illusion. You have to lift layers and layers, thick layers of nonsense. Like, what they say in cosmic, in Vedic cosmology, they say that there's 7 realms above, 7 realms below. Could that be the layers of nonsense that you have to get rid of before you really reach that plane of inertia called Earth and be grounded on Earth? Because from what Arthur is describing, it's much more than a veil that we have to lift. The veil is thin. The veil is like you can see through. But it's so freaking deep, that whole existence here, that I think it's layers of nonsense we have to break. What do you think?
Oh, I think absolutely. And I think for us to truly start really getting to some sort of getting through the veil, we just have to keep looking at those layers and layers and layers of nonsense, because there are so many. And what I've seen is it takes absolute a commitment to be really honest with yourself. Yeah. And really look at the painful things within yourself that you'd really rather not look at, because we are all a mix of good heart and kindness and love and all those things, but we are also all a mix of evil in a way. We all have layers that mostly we keep covered up from people, but we all certainly have layers of nastiness and spitefulness and jealousy and envy and all these sort of things, and arrogance and stubbornness. We're all a mix, much as we try and present our nicer parts to everyone around us. And what I've personally discovered, I'm 57, and I've been sort of looking at myself probably a good nearly 30 years or something, and I think there's still so much more that I have to keep looking at and being prepared to face. And I think what I've seen a lot of the time with people is everyone knows they've got some shit. Everyone knows they're not perfect. Everyone knows, but most people only just really scrape the surface of, looking at themselves, and they don't go further. It's like complacency that we've come across a lot, where people, they're looking for answers, they're looking for truth, they're diving in the rabbit holes a bit, and they find something that sort of appeals or fits in with what they're thinking, and they stop there.
Yeah.
They stop using the scrutiny, they stop really using their critical thinking, and they get comfortable. And once they get comfortable, they form a sense of belonging with something, and so therefore they stop looking. They get comfy and cozy, whether it's the law. Some people get stuck in the law for 50 years and they are brilliant. They're as good as the best barrister. They know as much as the judge, but they haven't realized that actually the law isn't the answer, so they're stuck. But then they've invested so much in the law and they're so good at it that they don't want to let go of that, because that means letting go of everything they've done for 50 years or something like that. And I think we're all sort of guilty of that, of getting to that level, getting a level of complacency. And I think especially at the moment, this there's almost a real culture of looking at your shit, but that becomes their life. Oh, my shit, and I'm doing this, I'm going to workshops, I'm seeing a therapist, I'm working on my shit, but the shit becomes them, and that's where we've got so much at the moment. Oh, that's triggering, this is that, this is the other. And in fact, I saw a woman talking who was a therapist, and she said what people are forgetting these days is that the point of doing sort of work on yourself is not to become triggered by everything. The point is to learn how to not be triggered by things. Whereas I think people are getting put in boxes. Now people are starting to want to look at themselves. They then get stuck in that box of, oh, this is what I'm like, I'm offended by this, I'm triggered by this. And it's all this sort of, they get comfortable with that. And that becomes their existence. And I think this is the problem, is most people aren't prepared to keep peeling back the onion. And in fact, this is what Arthur did when he started Love for Life, because we looked at the law, we looked at this, we looked at that, we looked at that, and every time he'd be like, no, but that's not enough. Yeah, take something from that, there's something good in that, but keep looking, and it was that being prepared to just not just get comfortable somewhere and keep scrutinizing, going, yeah, but there's this and this doesn't work, there's no sense here, there's no logic, move on, take what you've learned, but keep moving on. And I think if people really truly want to start creating something different for their lives, they've got to be prepared to really go deep, but not get stuck there. To keep letting it go, and not just get stuck and complacent with the level that they're at.
But the beauty in all this is the layers get thinner as you get closer to your natural state, right? You must have a huge layer to start, and then the more work you do on yourself, the layers get thinner, and
maybe
but
I would also say, though, I think sometimes as you go down the layers, what you've got to face can actually become harder to face, because you have to be prepared to challenge real core beliefs that you have about yourself. Like, most of us, we have sort of ideas of, oh, I'm like this, I'm like that, I'm like the other, and that's sort of our identity. That's who we think we are. And so to start unraveling those and pulling that can feel terrifying, because it's like, I thought that was who I was, but suddenly I've realized that that's not, that was just a script I was following. That was just a story, and that was just a habit, that was learned behavior, whatever it was. So to actually, I think the deeper you go, sometimes it can be more painful because you're really having to challenge, in fact, everything that you thought you were, and you realize, oh, but it's all just scripts, it's all just made up, it's all something somebody's told me, it's all a way I've learned to behave and act. And actually, I was totally wrong. I remember one of the scariest things for me, I think, was learning, I'm trying to think how it was, but realizing that something that I thought was a strength in me was actually totally not a strength at all. But that was terrifying, because, hey, but that's my strong point. And having to go, but actually it's not, it's destructive, it's this, that, and the other, is terrifying.
It's all in the intention. And going back to the original fallen state, it was an intention of a man to suggest an idea to another man, which became the image of Adam and Eve and the apple of the snake. And we have to be able to get back to the senses. We don't have to journey back through the maze of the whole rabbit warrens of the matrix. We just need to start connecting with the senses in the here and now, because that already undoes the influences. What Fiona's saying, for me, when you peel back the layers, you come to the glue that holds it all together, and that is more powerful, far more demonic than everything else one has done, because the underpinning of the whole of the matrix relies on the relationship you have with the self that was imagined into existence. It doesn't exist, and with it all the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, the distrust, and how it plays out in relationship with another man. It never play. It can lead to suicide if one gets sucked into the feelings of these distortions. But look, in the end, it's all about power and control. It's all man-made. It's started by a man to control and influence others to believe that they've got a better idea of your life than they have. And in this kind of situation, arrogance grew, ignorance grew, righteousness unfolded, all the ego elements, all these things started to come out. And it's here where the generational attrition process of getting at all of us through mum and dad and through the kids has led to where we are today, and now how far it's accelerated. It's so out of control now. But to get back to the glue is to let go of the greatest lie of all. The I, the me, the my, the mine, I own. Got to let go of all of it.
Yeah, I think that humility is so important. So important.
Yeah, empathy.
You've got to have humility. You've got to be humble about yourself, because, we're none of us perfect. No one's better than another person. And I think, part of the lack of humility in people actually comes from a lack of self-esteem, because if you're comfortable with yourself, then you got no axe to grind with somebody else. Exactly. It's and you can be humble, but the arrogance, the ignorance, all those sort of things come from someone feeling, sort of, as Arthur said, that they don't have enough, that they aren't enough, that who they are is not enough. So they've got to grasp at someone else, either to want to be with them to sort of, get what they can, as it were, or to try and put them down, because you've got to prove that, hey, I'm better than you. I mean, it's this whole thing we talk about creating community, and really there is absolutely nothing stopping any of us getting together to create community. Absolutely nothing. And yet we manage to impose so many problems, restrictions, barriers, feelings, emotions, this, that, and the other, that just cause so many problems that it's so hard for most people to do that. So many people say, oh, I'd love to live in a community. So many people, oh, I'd love to live in a community. Oh, I'd love to live in a... Oh, no, but they've got 50 million reasons why they can't.
They don't love what they say they love. And it's the last week's video and the week before that one we had. We don't truly love what we say we love. We don't even love our own life, our real life. We don't love... It's this responsibility has been given up so much. It's been so fragmented that the fiction has, as a prosthetic, as an illusion. The fantasies. All these thought forms. They have underpinned the glue of the fake persona that we've formed. Because you think about it, survival of the fittest, dog eat dog. All these are part of the attributes of generations. I've got to look after myself. I've got to be able to do this. I've got to make sure that because in the end, it's all about providing a roof over the head, food on the table, security with all of that, raising children, having a family. Now, you go back through the generations. We went through the manorialism, which we've touched on in other videos. Peasants, commoners, serfdom. Please, sir, you go to someone. Please, sir, can we have a piece of your land? Because it was all controlled by this tiny few people. They had all the power and control. The owners of the castles, the high priesthoods, the aristocrat, landlords, land barons. They represented 20 per 1 million of the population. And, you go to them and say, look, please, can we have some of your land? Because I'd like to build a home. I want to be able. These are all the natural things one should have anyway, because everybody wants it. And the landlord, the manor lord will say, yeah, sure, but I want 70% of what you make. I want to have your wife and sleep with. I want her to make my children too. I want you to come to my castle and paint and clean. I want you to do that. If I want to go to war, I want you to come to war with my army. You fight. That's exactly how it is today. Nothing's changed from going right back to what supposed was 1,000 years ago. This is still the same thing. And we have this underpinning glue of the fake self, this fake persona that we've been enamored with by everything coming at us from mum and dad, school, education, technology, you name it. And this is where we still are, grappling, because we have forgotten who we really are. We have forgotten our true power. And all this fiction, all this stuff is just mirroring what we've forgotten.
And now the manor lords really are all around us in terms of, sure, we've got the people at the top who are dictating everything, et cetera, and taking half our money with taxes, etc. But if you look at how the expectations we all have on each other and the expectations parents put on their children, it's in a way, it's all a very conditional based relationships. Pretty much all our relationships in the system are pretty conditionally based. Like the parents, yeah, sure, they're providing everything for the child, but so often then they have expectations. But I want you to go to school. I want you to do well in school. I want you to go to university. I want you to do this. That's them in a way being a manor lord. Sure, I'll provide you with a roof and food, etc. But you got to do this. And the whole of the system is like this system of, you go down to the welfare. Sure, we'll give you some money because you haven't got any, but you have to jump through X, Y, and Z hoops. It's all this give and take. There's no just give. It's all, okay, you do that, but you have to do, it's all a condition-based thing.
So to reclaim the sun that shines, you have to undo all the influences coming from those above you who got into your head, all the alphabet thoughts in your head, everything you're feeling, because it's come from them. You think about invasion and decimation of the original tribes. We are all the descendants of all these villages, all these nomadic tribes. We're all. It's all it is. It's just this is a continuation. I mean, if you wanted to be the superpower manor lord, you'd have to come up with all the tactics one has to keep everyone trapped in the matrix. So even when they're waking up, as Fiona was talking about earlier, they're not actually waking up. They're still busy in the matrix, still busy with the sirens in their head, unraveling all this shit and talking about this shit and all the other stuff that goes on. Nothing's changed because it's just the influences coming from those who persecute everybody else because they want everyone downtrodden so that they're lower than them, so they can be elevated to have the power, control, and the glory and all the celebrations they have, everything that they do. And the more when you do open your eyes and you start to see this, you'll realize that the Freemasonic New World Order is just Freemasons from area to area, all holding hands, creating the round table like King Arthur's round table. It's an international one world of men and women who, that's why when you saw Corona and everything that happened in Corona across the world, it was all the same thing, because it was all instigated by all the Freemasons. They're all working together to allow it to play out in Sweden and Denmark and Germany and France and England and Australia and Canada and America and Mexico. So we're dealing with men and women in a manorial system, hierarchical setup, information provided, need to know basis. And this is what you have to undo from, because they have collectively got at you and been constantly getting at you all the time through their books, through their systems, education, through their schools, because they've got to keep the world the way it is, because that's how they get their power and control. And you want them and you need them. And you don't know how to live without them because you're so attached to the prosthetics. Believe me, you are the prosthetic, but you wouldn't think of it like that.
I mean, just imagine the greatest revolution ever probably would be like, how many podcasts are there out there? Millions, talking about every subject under the sun. Now imagine if everybody listening to and making those podcasts all stopped, turned off all the thing, went outside, and in whatever thing they've got, whatever situation, started growing food and sharing it with other people.
And busy just doing that.
That's your revolution right there. And stop thinking about themselves, because the undoing will happen naturally the more you start getting in nature and giving and sharing with others unconditionally. That's how you start undoing all the crap. You don't have to think about it, talk about it. And then you start sharing, just as in Russia when the fall of communism, what was it called that time? Forgotten. Oh, anyway, when Gorbachev was there and
well, you had glasnost.
Yeah, that's it. And what kept Russians alive was the fact that the little farmers on their little weekend farms, they were growing the food. And that's what kept Russians alive at that point, because everything collapsed because it was the end of the Soviet Union. Now, imagine if we all had that here as well. Everyone had their little space. Everyone's growing, everyone's sharing. Then you don't need to rely on the big wheel anymore so much, which is what happened in Russia. The wheel fell apart because it was the end of the Soviet Union, etc. And what kept it going was the little people out there growing the food. Now, so if we all stopped right now talking, discussing everything, even if we still have to work for the time being to, keep the pills, but just start sharing food, growing and sharing food. It would be the biggest revolution ever.
No, I got another thing for you. Okay, the last 10 minutes, my brain is going 1,000 miles an hour, but I wrote it down not to forget. Okay, they go to crazy land to desensitize us from nature, from our true nature, from everything that surrounds us. All they want is us to sense that matrix, that nonsense, and to propagate it. Okay, so they go to crazy land. The other day, I was going around, and I was really sensing, like now you say everything's about sensing. How important is it for a being here on earth to start that journey to really sense the movie that you live in and the script that goes with it? Because the other day I was riding my bike and I was looking around and I was feeling like I was in a freaking movie. I see the guy mow his lawn, the other woman washing his, like the wash mania is on. It's summertime, so it's wash mania. It's important to wash everything, like, because that's mania. So so how, at what stage are you? Because you can easily think that you're going nuts when you start to think that you live in a movie.
You will.
Where
you think you're nuts.
Where you think you live in the real life, but
normal.
Suddenly you find yourself in a freaking movie that you don't want to act in.
You're in when you go through this, you remember you have been immersed. It's like you were picked up and dropped into the cauldron of feelings. Yeah. And in these feelings, from the womb to where you are now, you've been constantly being saturated by these distorted feelings of fiction. So when we talk about all these things, it's just these feelings. So when we can step aside from that and start working with the good heart and what Fiona's talking about, growing food, anything to do with life, because life doesn't have fiction. Food is not a fiction unless we turn it into fiction, which is institutionalizing, politicalizing, culturalizing, socializing, turning it into intellectual property that we wheel and deal and trade through the stock market, and we call it apples. It's realizing that the glue that underpins everything is the self, the identity, the name you've been given, where all these feelings are reflected from, that we've taken those that we are bonded to, which is what makes us go to war to fight others, because those feelings tell us to do that. And it's very easy to be manipulated by those feelings. So you're going to have conflict. You're going to have arguments. So when people come together and they're arguing because of historical situation, they don't want the peace and calm because they're still attached to the self where all the scripts are, where all these complaints and moaning and grinding and bitching and everything else goes on. And from that, victimization and everything else, because they don't know how else to be, because that self is underpinned by that stuff, because that's who they believe they are, that they're part of. That's his story, her story. So when you have the major breakthrough and you let go, None of this stuff's operating anymore in here. It's all gone. You end up with absolute silence. And all you're left with is life itself and the inspiration, life, and all the senses and what you're feeling. Now, this is all talking because, most people haven't got the guts. They don't have the guts yet to want to look at the shit, to really look at it without being absorbed in it and turn it into another form of the matrix. You get caught up in it. It's just...
Which it is now. I mean, you can go to any number of workshops on consciousness, but you're still just, it's also immersed in the system and using technology and this, that, and the other. And everyone thinks they're conscious, but it's like, no, you're not. Well, consciousness is awareness. And so, if you're aware, you can sense the harm that this is causing.
So is the ultimate is being aware of that movie you're in?
It's being aware of the harm that we are participating in. Because if we wake up to the true consciousness, we stop the harm. But it's like you look at the movie The Secret, or the whole thing about The Secret. You look at up to today, the latest one, like they call it Mind Valley on Facebook. All this amazing abilities we have to create, but we don't look at the fiction that we are associated with to create it all. So we're perpetuating fiction. But to perpetuate fiction, you need men, women, and children to be kidnapped and turned into slaves, put through the conveyor belt of factory planet Earth to come out as the blue collars, white collars, laborers, slave laborers, authorities with, rank and file positions and status and all that for you to have the Mind Valley work for you. It can't work. If you have the real one, you don't need the system and all this stuff to play this stuff out because you don't want to support the harm. By association, the things that we love, we say we love in the system that we want, which is, tied to security, entertainment, and, roof over our head and food on the, all these sort of things, it's associated with supporting the system where everyone has been educated and brainwashed to become the cogs and the wheels of the services that you need for you to live and manifest your $1 million through the Mind Valley program or $100 million. It doesn't free up from the fact that you're still relying on the whole system that produces this fiction in the first instance. So to wake up to what Fiona's touching on, you've got to go to the biggest picture. Is to see it all for what it really is. And this is all the Love for Life work going back since we started all the Love for Life work 20 years ago, to show the insights into how complicit we are, how hypocritical we are, and what it's going to take to undo our relationship to the system, because you cannot wake up while you're still relying on slaves to provide you what you want. We can't sit around and say that we are conscious while we still have bills coming in the mail because of the water that's coming through the tap into the home, or the power and the electricity and the internet and everything else that comes in our lives, and the fuel we buy and the oil that we buy, put into our vehicles. And then when we have to go to the shops and we have to buy everything we want. I mean, I talked about one of the other videos, just to have one pen or a pencil requires tens of thousands of brothers and sisters to be brainwashed into the factory planet Earth programming to provide all the aspects of what's going to provide you with the pen that you want. Now, if you want to let go of that whole system, you've got to also let go of the pen as well. So if you want to let go, you've got to let go of books, you've got to let go of everything. You've got to let go of all these things. Now, there's a transition because we're so compromised with the system and its rule of law controlling land, food, water, shelter, and you need commerce, you need money to bring a middleman between you and food, a middleman between you and land, you and shelter, you and whatever. And yet all the legal enforcement, all the other bullshit that comes into play that gives you terrorism, because it is terrorism to keep you stuck like this. So you keep relying on that system. So there is nothing that the mastermind behind all this, passed down through the generations, would ever be threatened while Mind Valley operate, because it's not threatening the major glue that keeps the whole thing going for them to have their glory and all their power.
It's interesting. I just saw a little thing the other day that reminded me of George Orwell, 1984, his doublethink. And if I get it right, the definition of doublethink is basically to sort of believe two opposing lies simultaneously. and believe them both to be true, even though they cancel each other out. And yet we're all doing that. For example, I always think of, I'm having children going through school, they're told, you can be anything you want, you can do it. And there's this whole thing of everybody can succeed sort of thing. No, we all know we need people to collect the garbage. We need people to work in the sewers. We need the hospital porters. So in a way, that is the double think, because we have this thing of, oh, yes, we can get to a world of equality. That's what we all think. We want everybody to be equal. The system can never work while everybody is equal. It doesn't work. It cannot work. The same way that the system would collapse if everyone was given their Sestry K Trust $1 billion or whatever it is. If everyone's got $1 billion, who's going to work to keep the system going? No one. So, because we've all got $1 billion, why should we go to work? But then there's no one to do the work, so the system falls apart. So it is this double think that we really kid ourselves, deceive ourselves into trying to feel good, like, yes, we can all do this, or yes, I want everyone to be equal, yes, I want everyone to have all the same opportunities, yes, I want everyone to live wealthy, prosperous, happy lives. But the fact is the system isn't set up that way, so it never ever will be. Never ever will be under the system. So that is actually, the 1984 doublespeak is obviously, it's a novel, it's shown as a much more polarized belief, so it's much more obvious. But when you look at it in our life, we're already living that. We love the ocean, we want to save it, but it's also okay to use the plastic that's going into the ocean. It's this, we're so bedaddled in our brains, so confused, so combobulated, because we're able to be this, oh yeah, I believe that. It's like Arthur's always saying, I love the mountain, so I'll drive my car to it. That's double think going on all the time.
It's more, Arthur, I'm sure you're going to agree with this, it's more like sensing the big picture of the big picture.
Like, and the scary thing is, sorry, I'm going to interrupt him, but the scary thing is sensing the big picture. The reason why people don't make these steps is because when you actually sense the big picture of what it's really going to take to change things, to say, stop destroying Earth, stop destroying us, it's too much. It's too hard.
That's what I was going to say. So what we're going to do?
And that's why you have to be vigilant and just wait, and you just meet those few people who've got the guts to go all the way, who are not going to be driven by the dark side, by these emotions, these unnatural feelings. This goes back through the super intelligence videos and all about the Ulysses on the Mars, and the whole sirens on the island thing that's been going on now for about a month. But there is no book or journey that can be described to us that's going to get out of this mess. We have to each willingly, in our unique way, come to the bottom of the stuff if we are willing to do it, and stop being influenced by those impressions, those things, because that's what compels us. It's these feelings that compels us to, I've got to get up, I've got to go to work, I've got to make money. And then from that, you have all the other feelings that lead to I've got to pay tax, I've got to pay my bills, I've got to pay that. And there's more feelings. I've got to get my kids to school because otherwise they're not going to do well with life. And, I'm not going to be seen as good. And then you have more because you got to go to the coffee shop, sit down with the girls and have a chat, or men, and have a chat about this and that and this and that. But basically nothing changes. There is money will never lead us to this freedom in the end. All we can do is work with the good heart and its virtues that can allow us to use the fiction to build the infrastructures like what we're doing with the village, but not to be attached to the money. So we don't bring any emotional stuff into and get into any battles over money. We don't play out this stuff. We don't play out this chaos, and we don't play out poor me and victim mentalities and all the other stuff, because it's not about money. It's a fiction. It's not about the whole of the system. It's fiction. The only thing that is real is our real life, if we allow it to be real again. But to be real, you are driven by the good heart and all those feelings that pulsate out of nature all around us. And the more we connect back to that pulsation of life, the more we're going to be influenced through the senses, the natural feelings. And the more we build it, with this, my journey through this is not really a journey. It took epiphanies, and it took the 2 weeks sleep that I had in 2012. It took other things from the dreams that I started when I was 14, 15 years old that led to all these things today, that I've been able to unravel a contribution to how the whole thing works and share that. But all that I've shared is still not going to help anybody, because the whole purpose of it is for them to reflect on and look at their own life and see if they can see where it is they're being stuck. If, you know, I can't tell them. You see, we can't tell anybody who they really are. No one ever can. And it's a lie. And you'll notice also from my work, I don't tell anybody who they are, who they think they are. I just show them what they're not and why it's not. Because it's in the letting go that you start to feel the domain of your real life with who you really are, which is the good hearted virtues. They're all words, all fictions. And be busy in the creativity, because the more we are creative from the heart space of nature, the more that the peace and the calm and the joy and all that starts rising up, and the elation, all the real things of who we really are as life comes to the fore. And when you start being immersed in that, why would you want to leave it? Because that's eternal. It's eternal life.
Okay, so it's eternal life. I like that you approach that topic. I'm picking up on this exactly where I wanted to go. If we get closer to our real God nature, call it godly or super intelligence or divine nature here on earth, could we be granted maybe a place in the firmament among the stars? Like, if there's gods on earth, there must be gods above. Maybe it's many gods. Maybe if I get, like, I have this hope that I'm going to be a star one day. Okay? I got to tell you, I want to end up in that firmament. I don't want to come back here if there's reincarnation or some kind of stuff like this. But again, you're going to tell me it's man-made idea. But if there is something above, there must be something below also. If we're all gods and goddesses, that signifies that there's gods and goddesses above. That makes really much sense. But can I end up there? Can I be granted eternal life this way?
Well, it's your choice.
I don't.
It's your free will.
You got to coach me on this.
It's nothing to coach, because it's something that you do with your free will. I mean, you know, they're words, free will, you know, all these things, but it's unique to each of us. We've all got it. It's just whether we're allowed to arise and start feeling these natural feelings again. Or do you want to continue allowing all the recalling, all the representation of these distorted feelings? Because when we work with fiction, like when we work with the computer and the internet, there's all these other feelings that come into play, because there's men and women behind the invention of this technology, the maintenance of this technology, and they're all driven by the distorted feelings of security and things, and they have all this unnatural material life. Those influences are coming at us all the time while we're talking right now. But then you add it to the motor vehicle and the machines and the clocks and all the things that we work with, or, you know, even these things, you know, they're all fictions. The amount of people that we are being entertained by and being influenced by as we live each day doing what we do in the system, in the fiction, amongst the prosthetics, is a plethora of men and women who are feeling all kinds of unnatural things. They just keep coming at us. And that's a peer pressure. And you don't even notice it. So while you're thinking, you know, whether you're going to be part of that firmament and be a star up there, you know, how much influence has come at you for you to think like that? Because all of that is not you. It ain't who you really are. Because if you already know who you are, it's already happening. We don't need to announce it. There's no trumpet required. There's nothing. We already are.
That's what I was just thinking. I reckon the people who are going to be stars, as it were, are the really humble people who just do what they do to help people. They're not thinking about, am I going to be a star?
Yeah, the meek shall inherit the earth.
Exactly, the meek shall inherit the word. They're not thinking about anything for their own gratification or glorification, etc. And there are people like that, you know, who are truly humble and truly just try and help people. And
the metamorphosis to turn from anti-life to life, it's just so frightening to most people, because they don't know how to truly let go. They don't want to let go because they're still so immersed in so many feelings where the unnatural security, the unnatural doubt, all these things that are going, all these terrible things that are coming at us all the time. So we hold on and we cling and we hold on and we cling. But the self, where all this is operating, only here, it really is, like I mentioned before, you put your thumb and forefinger together and just get that little gap. That's just the power that it has. That's the occults, that's the Freemasons, that's the whole world, all that's all it is. But when you open up your heart space, mate, it's eternal. It's incredible.
It's game over. That's it.
Yeah. And it just requires living in a simple way of life in the here and now, where, as Fiona's pointed out, we're not thinking for self anymore. We live to care, in our case, care for a village, and let the village take care of everyone. And the more that we're selfless, more we get everything. But remember, we all are on land now, generally speaking. We're all on land now. We've got everything. Yet something's happened in here to make us think that we don't have it all. And that we have to go searching for security, that we have to go searching to have land, searching to have a title deed, go searching to have happiness and joy. These are all fictions. They'll keep you lost in the matrix. There's no journey to any of this stuff. It never ends. You can't satiate something that's insatiable. That's what the fantasy, the delusion does to us. It's just, we've got to stop being it. Be that source of creativity. So, you create land, share the land, have a good bullshit detector. Make sure you don't have people come for all the wrong reasons, because a lot of people are so spoon-fed, they'll look to use and abuse any situation to gain an advantage for themselves, but because they're still not working from the good heart. So you've got to rout out the ego trips. When you meet people, if you ever meet people, and there's just such a silence, there's hardly anything being talked about, you're on a good path. If you're meeting people who are that peace, because they're not in the impression game. They're not here to impress you. They don't need you to be who they are. So they're not going to play out that shit. They're not going to be like peacocks running around the yard with their feathers and colors and say, look what I am, look what I can do, look what I'm about. We got to watch out for all that.
So is the fact that you get closer to your real self, to your higher self, to your divine self, or the source, will more answers come to you if God or the force is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent? Will you getting closer to your natural state, which is divine?
If you dream it that way, and you listen to what's coming back at you, and you're prepared to keep observing and scrutinizing whatever it is, you will undo it. But you have to be sincere. You have to be truly sincere and pure in intention to do this.
For answers to come.
Or it's already there. We have just been distracted by fake ideas of what truth is. We are just so immersed in fiction, and we're so dependent on it that we go diving into fiction to find a remedy to solve all our problems. But that only perpetuates the system. It's a private thing that each of us comes to. There is no guru or messiah or anyone who's going to fix this, because we truly have free will, and we are not answerable to anyone. There's no greater power than us in that way. But if we dream it, if we are, in my case, when I was 14, 15, I had such a horror of a childhood. I was just dreaming for the truth, and it was absolute. I didn't know that from that dreaming that, we're talking, more than 50 years later, that dream is still coming back at me, smashing me. Are you noticing? Are you looking? It takes a lot of guts, because it means you have to let go. You've got to let go and let go and let go. And you've got to know your heart, because if you want to dabble with the system and use the system to get out of the system without perpetuating anymore, you really got to know who you are, how to handle dynamite, like such radioactive material that's fiction. to use it to build the infrastructures of a village that we're doing, and knowing we have to let it all go as we've all crossed the bridge and burnt the bridge from the system to kingdom, back to paradise way of life. And then from there, have children come through who eventually will probably demolish much of the village that we've built over the generations, because we won't need all those fictions either as they return to their true manliness, the true man, the real man, the Adam and Eve principle, It's
I'm gonna have to let you go, guys, because I have to go get my son at work. But
okay.
That was very profound once again. I think but I've learned a lot, definitely. Maybe a little bit more about my self-obsession.
We're all self-obsessed. We are all self-obsessed.
That's what we're trying to undo here, the trauma and the nonsense in our heads and stuff. So me, I'm willing to face the truth and nothing but the truth and the whole truth. So I will face myself. I don't mind exposing my nonsense also, because I'm full of it again, I'm sure.
It's just that, remember, the Shardik is a full responsibility. When we love, it's full responsibility.
Exactly.
What we say we love, it's full responsibility. When we talk about God, we talk about love and that, it's full responsibility. Are we going to work with full responsibility for everything we think, feel, and do? If we do, we will pave a way out of this nightmare. We will reach a place in the dreaming of that true paradise, of that real peace and calm. We'll come back to it. As that happens to us, the chit chat in our heads, all the chaotic conversations that play conflict with each other, stops. Because now we're busy in the creativity. We are now the bee to the hive. We are the ant to the colony. We are the birds to the flock. We live as we breathe. We live as nature creates abundance and magnificence. We live as the sun shines. There's no self in it anymore. We're already being everything. We got it all. We don't need to have identities and all that stuff. It's already happening naturally, because we can smell each other. We can see each other. We can hear each other through the sounds of our movements, just like nature does. It doesn't need any prognostications. It doesn't need some kind of central point of arrival, some ideas where we projected to an arrival point and said, we've just gotten freedom. It didn't work, because that's not freedom.
Yeah.
Because you'll find the world that you're in is surrounded by slaves, spoon-fed slaves, clinging. Anyway,
that's
nice to talk.
We're out, and we'll be. Yeah, that was very profound. Again, if you want to come forward again next Saturday, I'm in for it.
We'll see. Might have to give it a rest for me anyway, just because it's my only day off really, and I've got other things to do.
Yeah, that's
but anyway. We can talk. We can work it out, or you and Arthur, or something. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just end the stream, and I'll say 2-3 words to you before you volatilize yourself into the internet. So much love, everyone. It's all love, always.